All right, it looks like it is officially noon, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Money Counts webinar today. My name is Allie Smith. I'm a specialist here at Penn State's Sokolov-Miller Family Financial and Life Skills Center. I head the one-on-one financial coaching program here at the center, and I also host this regular webinar series. Aiden Kamowski is one of our financial literacy ambassadors. He's also here with me today. He is going to be on the chat, posting some helpful links throughout the webinar and also answering any questions that you might have as we go. Throughout the webinar, feel free to ask questions in the chat or use the Q&A. I'll take a look at the Q&A and also the chat at the end. For those of you who are joining from the SMEAL Ethical Leadership Challenge, I'll post that QR code up at the end of the webinar as well. So today we are talking all about budgeting. This is a really important webinar because budgeting is the foundation of financial literacy. Without a good working budget, it'll be difficult to achieve any of your financial goals. We also know that federal student loan repayments are starting up again this month. And if you have loans that are going into repayment, your budget will be an important piece of ensuring that you can afford those payments after this long pause that we've had. So before we dive too far in here, I've got a poll for you. I would love to know who's in our audience here today. So I'm just asking, what's your affiliation with Penn State? Looks like we've got a good mix of folks. Some staff and faculty, some alumni, some undergraduate students, and some graduate students. That is fantastic. Welcome all. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you get some value out of today's webinar and walk away being able to create or improve upon your budget. So budgeting is a big part of financial wellness, and I'd go as far to say that budgeting is the foundation of financial wellness. So I would love for you to let me know in the chat, what does financial wellness mean to you? Being stable. I agree. Freedom to plan for the future. Absolutely. Being able to substantially provide for yourself. Yeah, I would agree. I think all of those things are part of financial wellness. So financial wellness is not determined by your income, your net worth, or your credit score. These factors can definitely play a role, but there are plenty of folks who make larger incomes that are struggling financially. So there's more to financial wellness than just these things. Here's what financial wellness officially is, according to the Consumer Finance Protection Bureau. In the present, it's having control over your day-to-day and month-to-month finances. It's also being able to make choices that bring you joy in everyday life. In the future, having financial wellness looks like having the capacity to absorb financial shock in the form of having an emergency fund. And it also looks like being on track to meet your financial goals. So maybe things like retirement or buying a home, that kind of thing. So now that you kind of see like what financial wellness officially is, what sorts of things do you think having financial wellness could bring you specifically? What could this do for you in your life? I'll give you guys another second. I know it takes a while to type stuff out. But I think the biggest thing that I think about is having less stress. Mhm. Being financially well can help you be proactive instead of reactive in planning and saving. Absolutely. Yeah, I think financial wellness, a big part of that is being proactive rather than reactive. Yeah, absolutely. Something I think about is the fact that having financial wellness can give you less stress in your life. I also think it gives you the ability to make decisions that serve you. I would hate to see someone stuck in a toxic job environment or like a toxic relationship because they have to because of money. Um, and being financially well, I think also gives you a sense of personal empowerment and independence. So these are good things, right? Things that we all want in our lives. Less stress, the ability to make decisions that serve us and our own well-being, and also this sense of empowerment and independence. And these are things I want for everyone. These are things that I think are important to everyone, no matter if you make $40,000 a year or $200,000 a year, right? So at the center, we approach financial wellness within this ladder framework. I mentioned this on the last webinar, so if you're coming back, I apologize. I'm reusing this example, but recently I helped my husband install a gutter on our garage. And from that experience, here's what I know to be true about climbing a ladder. Two big things. The first is that a stable base is important, right? We don't want our ladder wiggling around all over the place as we're climbing up the side of the garage. And the second thing is we've got to take it one step at a time. We can't just jump to the top of the ladder and expect that to go well. So our financial wellness ladder actually works the same. Our budget is our stable base and foundation in financial literacy. And from there, we can work on achieving different financial goals like creating an emergency fund, conquering our debt, planning for the future, and growing our wealth. Ultimately, at some point in our lives, we all want to find ourselves at the fourth or fifth rungs of this ladder. But this is a journey and it will likely take years to get there. But it all starts with a budget. Ultimately, your budget tells a story. So let's take a look at Alex's budget to see what story it tells. Here we have Alex's budget. His income's on the right side here. His income totals $1,325. He has got a job. He's got some income from grants and scholarships, and he also got a little bit of money from his grandma. His expenses are over here on the left. I'll give you a minute to take a look over Alex's budget and share in the chat anything that you notice about this. Yeah, Cheryl says he's on a path to big time debt. Absolutely. And I think that that's the story this is telling, right? We see that he's got a negative surplus, so a deficit of $470, which is a rather big amount, I think. If we dig a little deeper, the other thing that tells me that Alex is probably navigating some debt here is that he's got a credit card payment of $35. So that's probably a minimum credit card payment. And this kind of makes sense since we know that he's spending more money than he has. He's probably racking up a credit card balance and paying only the minimum payment. So that's not good. Abby says that is a lot of clothes every month. And I agree with that. I noticed that he's spending that $100 on clothes, and he's also spending $150 on dining out, which I have to wonder if those things are truly needs since he is spending more money than he's bringing in. Lastly, the last two kind of smaller things that I notice about this is that he is saving $25 and is giving $40 to charity, which, I mean, it's just interesting knowing that he's operating in a deficit, right? So Alex, he's got a lot going on here. Agreed that the combination of groceries and dining out seems like a lot. He could be in one of those situations where, you know, he buys groceries and then ends up dining out, so he throws out the groceries. I think we've all been there, right? But that's not ideal for our budgets or our waistlines, right? So on the surface, you know, if we just quickly glance at this budget, he might look okay. At least he has a budget, right? But as we dig deeper in here, we find out that maybe he's not really doing okay. So let's explore how we could build a better budget. A good budget is one that is honest, accurate, and complete. And I'll say that a few times throughout today's webinar. So there are many methods to choose from to build your budget around. You have to choose the right method for you, and this might take a little bit of trial and error. And before you let budgeting intimidate you, know that a budget is really just a spending plan. It is a plan for how you are going to spend your money, and it's also a tool to help you stick to that plan. We'll talk about the available tools in just a minute, but here are some options for how you might plan and organize your money. You might have heard of some of these already, and some might be new to you. So there is the cash envelope method. With this method, you divide your available spending money for the month into separate envelopes that represent your spending categories. So think things like food, entertainment, clothing, that kind of thing. If you take this literally, this method might be a little outdated. I'm not sure how many of us have all of our money in cash or are able to get that much cash out regularly, but these can be virtual envelopes, and this approach can be adapted for use within budgeting apps. In the zero-based budget, you allocate every penny that you bring in each month to things like savings, debt, and your expenses. The budgeting sheet that we have at the center follows this zero-based budget method. Then there is the 50-30-20 method. This is a popular one. In this method, you allocate 50% of your monthly net income to needs, 30% to wants, and 20% to savings. There is also the pay yourself first method, which can actually be combined with any of these other methods. Under this method, you prioritize saving first. So anytime you bring money in, the first thing you'll do is save the portion that you planned to save, ideally at minimum at least 10% of what you're bringing in, but ideally somewhere between 10 to 20% of what you're bringing in. I think it can be really easy to say that we're going to save money and then end up spending everything and having nothing left over to save. So if we save first and spend what's left, we're paying ourselves first, right? So I highly recommend stacking this method with whichever other budgeting method that you plan to follow. Lastly, there is the 70-20-10 method. And under this one, you'll allocate 70% of your monthly net income to expenses, 20% to savings, and 10% to debt. So there are a lot of options to choose from. And remember, this is just a way for you to organize your money. This would be what you would call your spending plan. So you've got to create this plan, and then I'll talk about in a few minutes, you'll get a tool, or you'll use a tool to help you actually achieve that plan. So I've got another poll question for you. Which of these budgeting styles do you think might work the best for you. Which of these would you be willing to try? And you can actually select multiple here if there are multiple that you think might work really well, and you might want to try a few out. I'm seeing a lot of zero-based budgets, and personally, that's what I like. So I'm not surprised that it's pretty popular. And I'm seeing a lot of people choose pay yourself first as well, which I'm happy to see. Remember, you can stack that one on with any of these budgeting methods. So for example, if you use the 50-30-20 and the pay yourself first, you would just make sure when you get your income coming in that you set aside that 20% first before you spend anything else. All right, I will share these results out with you so you can take a look at what other people think might work in their life, what type of financial organization budgeting method might work for them. So before we go any further and kind of dig into this process of creating a budget, I just want to highlight that budgeting is a physical activity, not a mental one. So maybe you currently approach your finances by thinking about your money. Maybe you think about how much you got in your paycheck, then you think about paying rent, and you're left with what you have to spend on food or to use to go out with this weekend. That's a good start, but it's not quite budgeting. So it is really important that you create a physical budget of some kind. Journaling for your mental health is similar to budgeting for your financial health. It's all about getting it out of your head and onto paper. It can be a big stress reducer and relieve a lot of anxiety around it all. So if you currently have a mental budget, or if you don't have one at all, it really is this easy. Once you've chosen your budgeting style that we just talked about on the last slide, you will set a financial goal. Starting with a goal can be a great motivator to actually complete and follow your budget. So maybe your financial goal is to save for a trip, pay off your credit card balance, or create an emergency fund. Next, you'll find a tool that you like. We'll talk about those tools in a few slides. Then you'll identify your income and your expenses and subtract your expenses from your income. This is otherwise known as tracking your spending, and this is an important part of budgeting. The last step, adjusting your spending as needed, is the most important step. If you are just tracking your spending and not really doing anything with the data that you gather, you're not really budgeting. And I think this is exactly what was missing from Alex's budget that we looked at earlier. He had tracked his spending and he might have felt like he had a good budget, but he wasn't adjusting his spending based on the deficit that he had going on. So we need to make sure we're looking at our budgets regularly and using this information to actually change our habits and adjust our spending. And if this feels like a lot, don't worry, we're going to unpack each of these steps. Starting with step one, which is to set a SMART goal. So we don't want to set just any old goal. We want it to be a SMART goal. And a SMART goal is one that is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. So if you made a financial goal to save money, you might turn that into a SMART goal by adding a few details. So how about we take the goal of, I want to save money, and we turn it into a SMART goal by saying, I want to save $200 in an emergency fund every month for the next 12 months. We've made that goal specific, we've made it measurable, achievable, relevant, and timely. Turning your goal into a SMART goal gives you a clear, easy to follow roadmap to achieving that goal. It's now not just a vague statement that you hope to achieve, but it's something that you can tangibly fit into your budget and actually work towards. Step 2 is to find a tool that you like. Remember that your budget needs to be 2 things: a plan for your money and also a tool to help you achieve that plan. So when you're finding a budgeting tool, you're looking for something that can help you kind of do both of those things. There are a ton of tools, apps, and websites out there to help you build and work on a budget. Some are paid, but many are free, including the resources that are on our website. For beginners to budgeting, I do recommend using Excel because you do have to be super intentional and go in and track your own spending. Tracking your spending can be a very eye-opening habit if you've never done it before. There are some budgeting apps that will connect to your accounts and track your spending for you. But if you haven't already built a good budgeting habit that forces you to take some time and actually look at and absorb what you're spending, it might be tough to implement a good budgeting habit when you start with an app. You might be tracking your spending, but missing that important piece of adjusting your habits. So I fully recommend the budgeting sheet on our website. It is a comprehensive tool that allows you to both create your spending plan and also track your spending to help you achieve that plan. You can find it at financialliteracy.psu.edu. If you click our About tab and then Resources from there, it will be the first link under the Worksheets heading. And I believe Aiden's going to post a link in the chat. Good job. If you are looking for an app, some apps that some of us use in the center and have heard good things about include Mint, You Need a Budget, Good Budget, Zeta, and Pocket Guard. You Need a Budget, or YNAB, is a paid app, but you're able to get 1 year free as a student if you use your Penn State email to sign up. And I'll say the 2 of these that I see people use most frequently and seem to have success with are Mint and YNAB. Mint will connect up to your bank account and track your spending for you and allow you to set goals in each of your own spending categories. You Need a Budget uses the zero-based budgeting method, so you can allocate every dollar you earn into a category that you create in the app. Again, if you do try a budgeting app, be sure to set the time aside to pull it up and look at your spending at least once a week so you can use that information to change your spending habits if needed. So I've got one more poll for you. We talked about the budgeting styles. I would love to know which budgeting tool do you think might work best for you? Or which of these would you be willing to try, or do you already use? Again, this is multiple choice, so if there are a few options that you think might work well for you, you can select both of those. Okay, I'm going to share this out. Most folks are saying an Excel template like the one from the center, and I absolutely encourage you to check out the one that we have. It's really good. There's no math involved. It does everything for you. And it's personally what I use. I think it's a fantastic tool. Some of us also like the idea of using Mint or You Need a Budget, and are also open to exploring your options, which I encourage you to do. This whole process of creating a budget and finding a good method and tool that you like might take some trial and error. and it's more likely to be a habit that you stick with if it fits your own style, whatever that is. So on to step 3 here. We've got our SMART goal and we've got our budgeting tool. Now we are going to use that tool to help us identify our income and expenses. We should be building our budgets off of our net income because this is the money that's actually landing in our bank accounts and that we get to use. If you have trouble remembering the difference between gross income and net income, here's a little rhyme for you. Gross is the most and net is what you get. That might help you remember. Next, we're going to track our expenses. So think about how you pay for items. Do you use your debit card, your credit card, or maybe do you use cash? Or might you use a mix of all 3 of those? Remember again that our budgets have to be honest, accurate, and complete, so we can't let any of our spending slip through the cracks. I know a lot of us, myself included, tend to be guilty on like not tracking cash because that's not our primary income source or our primary spending method. But it is important that our budget is complete and the cash that we bring in or receive is part of that, right? So for credit or debit card spending, you could keep your receipts, but you could also just pull up your bank account and look through your transactions. For cash, it is a little bit more tricky. You could, again, keep your receipts, or something that I like to do when I have cash is whenever I spend it, I'll just make a little note in my notes app on my phone, and then I'll revisit that when I'm tracking my spending for my budget. So speaking of that, I want to just give a quick example on what doing my budget looks like for me, and it might help you envision how a budgeting habit could kind of fit into your life. Personally, like I said earlier, I am an Excel girly, so my entire budget is on the Excel sheet from the center. Again, it's fantastic. Once a week, usually on Sundays, I bust out my Excel sheet over a cup of coffee and I pull up my bank account and my credit card account because that is where I do my spending. And I update my budget sheet with all the spending I've done in the last week since the last time that I did this tracking. And when I'm done tracking my spending, I take a moment to look over it all and determine if I'm on track with the goals or the spending limits that I've set for myself or not. So, for example, if it's the second week of the month and I am over halfway through my monthly food budget, I'll realize in that moment that I need to make a change and cut back a bit on the weeks ahead to stay on track within my overall budget. If you do use a budgeting app, it will probably track your spending for you, but I still encourage you to set that time aside once a week to look over it and really have those same conversations with yourself. Like, where am I at in my overall monthly spending goals in each category? Like, am I on track? Am I over? Am I under? What does this look like? And I really recommend doing this once a week. In working with a lot of students, I found that once a week, a lot of students on their budgets, I found that once a week tends to be the sweet spot. So if we do it more than once a week, we might resent it because that feels like a lot. You don't want to feel like you have to like whip out your Excel sheet anytime that you swipe your card. And then if you do it like once a month, I don't think that's frequent enough because by the time you sit down to track your spending, it's going to take way longer and you might forget some of the things that you spent on. So you'll see a charge in your bank account and be like, oh, like, what was that? I can't even remember. So I really encourage you to do this tracking process once a week, whether that's using an Excel sheet or an app. Once a week seems to be the sweet spot. You can also categorize your expenses into different groups throughout this process. Different budget categories you might consider are on the screen here. And within your categories, you might even split up your expenses into needs and wants. Groceries are definitely a need in this example. And in this example, Starbucks was also a need, but Jamba Juice and Raising Cane's was a want. If we do need to cut our expenses to stay within budget, we're going to cut from the wants. So it's important to know which is which for you within your budget. It's also a good idea to budget monthly for quarterly and annual expenses. For example, my sewer bill is $180 and it gets billed every 3 months. So I set aside $60 a month for that expense. And this is helpful to kind of keep an even keel every month on my budget and not have my budget take a bigger hit every 3 months when the sewer bill comes out. So your budget is really supposed to serve you in achieving financial wellness. And I'm going to drop a depressing statistic real quick. The Fed's 2022 Economic Wellbeing Survey found that 37% of Americans couldn't cover a hypothetical $400 emergency expense. So when these types of emergencies come up and folks are without money to cover it, it probably looks like swiping a credit card and going into some sort of credit card debt. So be sure to make room in your budget for saving. Remember to pay yourself first. Saving to create an emergency fund and preparing for those periodic expenses can help prevent going into credit card debt or debt in general. Your emergency fund should ideally be at least 3 months of your living expenses. So not necessarily 3 months of your income, but your expenses. So things like your rent or mortgage, utilities, food, loan payments, all that good stuff, at least 3 months of those things. This is important because when emergencies inevitably rise and you have an emergency fund, they are no longer financial emergencies. Having an emergency fund lessens the emergency by at least one level. So your savings account might end up looking like this bucket here. You've got your emergency fund in there. You've got some money allocated for your short-term goals and periodic expenses that you have coming up, like insurance, taxes, car registration, and gift shopping. Be sure that your savings account is safe and accessible to you in something like an FDIC insured savings account or a high yield savings account. High yield savings accounts are paying between 4 to 5% interest right now, so they are really great financial accounts to have. Aiden's going to drop a link in the chat. So if you don't have a high yield savings account, you can explore those and find out where you might get one. So the next step here is to subtract your income from your expenses. In this example, this person has their paycheck, some birthday money, and $5 that they maybe found on the sidewalk. Remember, your budget's got to be honest, accurate, and complete, right? So we should include all sources of income. We see their expenses here as well. They have subtracted their expenses from their income, so they have got a surplus of $23.53. Yay, that's good news, right? As we saw in Alex's example, credit cards do make it possible to spend more money than you have and end up with a shortage. So a surplus is a good thing. And if you have a budget surplus, congrats. Here are some things you might consider with your surplus. First of all, establishing your 3 months of expenses in your emergency fund. If you have debts, you could work on paying those down, prioritizing the highest interest debt that you have first. Or you could begin to invest for retirement through something like a Roth IRA. If you have a shortage, that is definitely less exciting. Here are some things you might think about if you have a budget shortage. The first thing we tend to think about when we feel like we need more money or when we feel like we're running short on money is increasing our income. But I'll be honest, I think it's probably a bit easier to cut out excess unnecessary spending first. So you'll want to look back over your spending that you've tracked and decide which things were wants that you probably shouldn't have purchased, knowing that you ended up in a shortage, and commit to changing your spending habits and behavior in the future. You could also find ways to spend less, like using grocery store apps to find deals and get cash back. You could get a roommate. You could move to a lower cost of living area if that is an option, or even utilize local food banks to supplement your food budget. Lastly, you could think of ways to earn more money. So if you are a student and you don't have a job, maybe that looks like getting an on-campus job to help close that gap. For those of us who work full-time, maybe that looks like getting a part-time job on the weekend. But notice that earning more is not the first option. It's actually the last option. I always encourage people, before using your precious time to go work more, let's figure out if there are ways that we can cut your spending and bring this budget into balance first. So we saw Alex's budget earlier. We know that he had a shortage. If anyone remembers Alex's budget, what could he do to address this shortage? Go ahead and share it in the chat. Abby says, cut back on eating out. Agreed. I think that would be a good one because I think he spent $150 eating out. That's quite a bit. Stop buying clothes. Yeah, especially if he didn't need those clothes that he was buying. Like $100 is quite a bit of money, especially when your income's only $1,300, right? So if he didn't need the clothes, he could stop buying them. If he did need the clothes, maybe it's winter and he needed a winter coat or something, he could check out some local thrift stores and probably get something that's pretty darn good for a lot cheaper. Yeah. Maybe he could get a roommate too. Or he could supplement his grocery budget with some of the local food banks. Like here in State College, students can use the Lions Pantry. And there's also the the State College Food Pantry as well. Yeah, he could earn more money through rideshare. We did see that he has a car payment. So he's got a car, right? I love that idea. Cheryl says money from his grandma could go into the envelope system to use for clothes and Starbucks treats. Yeah, that could help eliminate the mass amount of spending compared to his income that he was doing with just what he had coming in. Love these ideas. So I would encourage everyone, if you are tracking your spending and you're figuring these things out and you're coming up with a shortage, get creative. Like Cheryl mentioned here, how can you overcome this shortage in a way that still works for you and your life? So this, I think, was a lot of information, but here's the budgeting process again as a recap. If you don't have a budget, you start with your SMART goal, right? You find a budgeting tool, an Excel sheet or an app, and then you identify your income and track your spending. And then ongoing, you're going to have to adjust your spending as needed. So a budget isn't really a set it and forget it kind of thing. It's a living, breathing tool that you should revisit at least once a week. We are also here to help. I work with students all the time to help them create their budget and find creative ways of sticking to it. We have a lot of different services to offer, all for free. Our entire suite of services are available to Penn State students, and some of our services are available to staff and faculty and the larger Penn State community. Our goal with all of these things is really to help you understand and take control of your finances. So to kind of quickly go through these, we offer our one-on-one financial coaching appointments. Students can schedule those through Starfish. We do meet with alumni as well. Alumni, if you'd like to set up a financial coaching appointment, you can email us at finlit@psu.edu. We work with our partners at PNC to offer one-on-one financial coaching to Penn State faculty and staff. So faculty and staff, if you're interested in that, feel free to reach out to us and we'll get you connected. We've got group presentations and webinars, and those can be scheduled for classes, student organizations, and groups. We've also got our self-study modules on a variety of different topics. Those are in Canvas, and they are actually open to the public. Our mentoring program provides a space for current students to connect with an alumni or someone from the Penn State community to receive guidance on financial matters and also life skills. And lastly, I just want to take a minute to plug our newest offering, which is our workshops program. My director, Julie, runs the workshops program, and she's really excited about the dates that we have coming up. So these are an opportunity to get hands-on with your finances. So instead of learning about budgeting like you did today, you'll build and work on creating your own budget. You'll work within your budget. Instead of just learning about a credit score, you'll check your own score and pull your credit report. So it's very hands-on. The Financial Foundations workshops are 3 2-hour sessions. They happen consecutively within a week. And within those, you'll work towards building your own financial foundations. So the current dates that we're offering these are October 23rd, 25th, and 27th from 3 to 5 p.m. and November 14th, 15th, and 16th from noon to 2 p.m. These workshops are open to students and also faculty and staff. So be sure to sign up if you're interested. We do ask if you sign up for like a chunk of dates that you can make at least 2 out of 3 of those sessions. Here are some QR codes with direct links to some of the programs I just mentioned for easy access. If you're interested in scheduling a Starfish appointment, this link will take you directly to Starfish where you can schedule a coaching session. The second QR code is to register for a workshop. If you are a current student right now and are passionate about financial literacy and can see yourself doing some of the things that we do here, like the workshops and the one-on-ones, Aiden is one of our financial literacy ambassadors. We are hiring right now for the spring. We have a work study and a wage payroll position available. If you scan that QR code, that'll take you to the job posting. And finally, if you'd like to get involved in the mentoring program, this last QR code will take you to a link to sign up. Here is our contact information. Please feel free to check out our website or email us. And if you'd like to give us some feedback on today's webinar, we would really appreciate it. If you scan the link on the, scan the QR code here, it will take you to our survey where you can give us some feedback, and we'll also drop a link in the chat. Thank you so much for attending today's webinar. I hope you're feeling motivated to create or improve upon your own budget. And if there are any questions, I'll dive into those here in just a minute. But our next webinar is in 2 weeks, and our topic is debt management. If you are navigating any sort of debt, this could be a really helpful one. So join us on October 17th, same time, same place. We would love to see you there.